My name is Marty Connell. These are my musings. Let's get rolling. Negative reviews are more honest than positive reviews. That's the statement I want to look at today. The reason why is because over the past couple years, I've noticed in places like Reddit, BGG, and other social media, when a negative review comes out for a game that might have a lot of positive reviews or a lot of hype, a lot of the comments will say something like, "Thank you for your honest review. Thank you for finally being honest," unlike some of those other reviews, kind of insinuating that because it's negative, it's more honest than one that's positive. And when people start discussing why they may believe it's more honest, it comes down usually to a couple things. One is people only make positive reviews or constantly make positive reviews because money's involved, because they're paid. So if a negative review comes out, that must mean that they weren't paid and they can be honest about it. I can honestly say in the 6.5 years that we've been doing this podcast, we have never ever been offered money for a review. And over those past 6.5 years, we've made some incredible relationships with publishers. And not once have they said, "Hey, if you want this game over here, I'll slip you a few bucks if you give us a positive review." It's never happened. And in fact, I've reached out to some of my other friends who do reviews on board games, and they're like, nope, nobody's ever offered us any money, nor have we ever taken any money for doing something like that. Now, that doesn't mean some money might be changing hands, but typically when money changes hands, it's for previews. And there's a difference between reviews and previews. Previews you typically see for something like a Kickstarter that's getting ready to come out, where somebody may look at a prototype or early type of game and just give a lot of facts based on it, how it plays, how it looks, just some general gameplay mechanics. And usually they keep their opinions kind of to a minimum. This is because lots of times it is a paid preview. It's more like a commercial for the product that's getting ready to come out. But once a product comes out and somebody gives their honest opinion about a game, well, at that point it becomes a review. And there may be some sort of compensation in, like, you get a free copy of a game, which I'll come back to in just a second. But like I said, I've never seen money offered for something like that. So let's just put that one aside for a second and say, okay, well, if money's not involved, what's another reason for a positive review possibly being influenced such that you won't be as honest with it? And that goes back to what I mentioned before, working with the publisher and possibly getting free games. Yes, there are a lot of publishers out there that will offer, hey, there's a game that's coming out, would you be interested in reviewing it? And many times the game reviewer says, yes, I would like to do that. But there's typically an understanding that once that game gets in the reviewer's hands, it's totally up to them to what they do with it. It could be a good review, it could be a negative review. Most publishers are very cool about that. But I do get where people may think, well, if they trash a game, that free game review thing with that publisher, that gravy train may be over and they may not get any more copies. Well, again, I can only speak for us, but it is way more important to be honest to the people that are listening to you, to your audience, than to a publisher. See, we do this for the people to listen to about gaming and hear about games, and not necessarily as just a mouthpiece for a publisher. And if a publisher doesn't want to work with us anymore, fine. We can just go out and buy a game and review it ourselves. I mean, I can't go out and buy listeners. Can I buy listeners? Whoa. Delete. In fact, there are publishers that don't work with us anymore because of some things we've said about games in the past, and that's a-okay. And we've actually covered some of their games since that time because, well, it's a game we thought we might be interested in and wanted to check out. But I will say for us, we rarely ever just totally trash it. And that's because we know that there are people behind this game that made it into what it is. There's designers and artists who put a lot of time and effort into making this creation, and you just don't want to come out there and just blast it. Doesn't mean you can't be tactfully honest with, there's just certain aspects of this game I didn't care for. There's certain mechanics I didn't like. It was too long. There was too much downtime. We're not going to be one of those that just totally just dumps on it and say, oh man, how can anybody ever make this game? This is the worst game ever. Again, because there are people that make this, and you don't want to be a jerk about it. And for those games that we think are just really not that good, you know what? We don't talk about them. We've gotten games in the past, Tony and I, my co-host, will say, this just doesn't really interest either one of us, and it's just something we don't want to talk about. Typically, we want to have a very positive content and be kind of up and upbeat and everything. And we just don't want to just trash something just for the sake of trashing it. So we'll let them know, you know what? It's a game that wasn't for us. We're not going to talk about it. And also, over the years, we've kind of learned what games we've liked. So when games come out, we may go, well, that game kind of is a little bit like that one. I like the mechanics of that. Ooh, that looks pretty good too. We'd probably like those. Let's go check those out. So just after over the years, you end up with more games that you're going to play that you like just because you kind of know what your own tastes are. So yes, I can totally see where positive reviews might be influenced in such the way that you might not want to be as harsh with them. So I guess we can jump straight to the conclusion that negative reviews are more honest. Well, hold up a minute. Is there any advantage to having negative reviews? Just look at the internet today. It's all about getting some clicks and views and everything. And what's the quickest way to do that is to sensationalize something or put up something negative. I mean, let's face it. If I had 2 video clips and one of those video clips was a man helps up an elderly woman who fell down. The other video clip is elderly woman roundhouse kicks a man. Which one are you probably going to click? Elderly woman roundhouse kicks a man. Save, save, save. We are in a clickbait era. Thumbnails, titles, anything that you can get somebody to come in and click on, you're going to do it. Content creators are going to do it. Websites are going to do it. That's just how it works. So if you come out with something, a negative review, and kind of maybe go over the top with it, or talk about how it's just really not that great, especially when a lot of other people may like that thing. And I'm talking about anything at this point. Board games, video games, movies, etc. If you can have a contrary point to what everybody else is saying, people are going to be drawn to that because it's like, oh, well, if all these people are kind of saying the same thing over here, let's see what this person has to say. And I'm not saying that people purposely make negative reviews just for that reason, but if they look at the history and they've done a negative review, they might be tempted to maybe lay it on a little more thick than they otherwise would, knowing it's like, ooh, you know what? We got a lot of comments and a lot of clicks and a lot of views on this one particular video over here. Maybe it won't hurt. Now I know that sounds very accusatory, saying, oh great, so you're now saying every negative review does that? No, I'm not. What I'm trying to say is that there are situations where giving a negative review does have a benefit. There are situations where positive reviews does have a benefit. So where does that leave us as a consumer? Well, we have to do a lot more research. You may find a particular reviewer that you are just in sync with, and you know that you know what they like, you know what they dislike, and they have a very consistent message. So even if that person gives a lot of negative reviews, it may be very consistent based on a certain thing. There's one particular mechanic or one thing they don't like, and they keep saying the same thing over and over. Well, they're being very honest and they're being very consistent. Likewise, if there's somebody who you hear a lot of positive things about, but it's consistently the same thing over and over, well, that just happens to be what they like. So you kind of have to get in tune with people and the reviews that you're reading and watching and listening to. And in fact, for me personally, as a consumer of anything, whether I'm going to Amazon and buying a product, getting ready to watch a movie or TV show, I will find some of the most positive reviews and some of the most negative and read both. And what happens is if I see negative reviews and they say a lot of the same thing, I thought, wow, if they're all saying this, there must be something to it. But if there's a negative review that's totally 180 from everything else everybody else is saying, it's not saying it's wrong. It's just that whatever they're saying is something didn't click, something wasn't right. But if there's one person out of 50 that just had this one little thing they didn't care for, but other people did, again, it could be a personal preference, or it could be maybe they just missed something. So you're probably thinking, Marty, you just wasted my entire time. You're supposed to tell me that negative reviews are more honest or less honest. They may be, they may not be.
Well, this has all been one big tease.
It's just the fact you just can't make a blanket statement saying that. There are benefits to both, and the onus is on you to be able to weed through all these things that you read and watch and listen to make that decision for yourself. But that's just my thoughts. Let me ask you a question. Do you feel that negative reviews are more honest? Do you put more credence in a review that's more negative towards something, thinking there's probably something to it and these people aren't trying to gain the system or anything like that? Or you pretty much, no, I think you can have very positive reviews that are just as honest as very negative reviews. Why don't you let me know in the comments? And while you're down that way making some comments, why don't you punch that subscribe button and flick that like button? I would very much appreciate it. And as always, I've been Marty. These have been my musings, and I am